Hello and welcome. So, in this episode, I'm going to get into a few different ways that you can migrate from Evernote to Notion. I've decided to move from Evernote to Notion after the recent change that they've made to the free plan, the free offering. If you have not noticed, Notion's free plan now offers unlimited content. So with that, I've just felt that it was easier now for me to move all of my notes from Evernote. I have a lot of content there into Notion without having to kind of be hit with any kind of charges as I work my way through that migration. And this is really has nothing to do with whether it's free or paid. It was more for me to evaluate the platform and make sure it's a good fit, which I'm pretty sure it will be, but not have to incur cost, additional cost really, to leveraging the platform because I'm already paying for Evernote now. And as I mentioned in one of the previous videos, that subscription on Evernote is going to go away. So if I need the additional features in the Personal Pro, which is the paid plan for Notion, then I'll just take the money that I was paying to Evernote and give it to Notion. I definitely do not discourage against paying for something that brings value. So from moving over, into the into Notion, there are a few different methods that can be used to get your data from out of Evernote and into Notion. And I'm going to walk through a couple of those. So the first one that you could do is you could just as easily do a manual, right? You can go over into Evernote and figure out which notes that you need, then one at a time go into Notion, copy, paste, move your content this way, right? It's really manual and it does not scale at all. One thing you'll notice is when I did the copy paste, you'll see that the image did not come over. So if you do it this way, you'd have to manually drag over your images into Notion. And this way does work. You'll see it'll download the file. Now in the free version, there is a limitation on the file size, which is 5 MB. And if your files are larger than that, you're probably going to have issues. So just take note of that particular limitation as well. So this is one way again of migrating your notes from Evernote into Notion. It's a manual process, and if you have a lot of notes like I do, I have over 2,800 notes in Evernote. This way of moving notes does not scale and is really not something that I would do personally. So let's go into the second method. This method is really like an easy button that Evernote is providing to you. So if you go into the import area here, they have Evernote import. Click on this here. You put in your credentials for Evernote. You go ahead and authorize the Evernote and give it access to your an authorized Notion to have access to your Evernote. It'll run through the authentication process there, get access, and once it does, it'll show you the different notebooks that you have in Evernote, and you can select which ones you want in order to migrate data from one platform to another. So if I go ahead and you can see here, it gives you the quantity of notes within each of the Evernote notebooks. Select whichever ones you want, and then you pretty easily you go ahead and hit import. it starts the import process. It takes you over to, it creates, an actual area where it starts to import your notes here named after the notebook. And then you can see the actual process of importing. And it gives you a running count as it's doing this import. You may have noticed that it started doing the import, it got up to 130, kind of started doing a little bit more imports, and then it just disappeared as far as that progress bar. Now I've done this a few times already, and I've noticed that for some reason it gets to pretty much the same note within as it's doing this import, and it crashes. And this is probably a bug due to either certain characters that are not handled well within the import process, or certain type of notes. I thought it had something to do with encrypted notes at first, and even unencrypting my notes, it still failed pretty much at the same number of imported notes. So I'll have to dig into that a little bit deeper, but this is one way again to do your import, which is fairly easy, and it migrates everything in. So you can see in here even the image came over with the import of that same note that we tried to do a copy paste on. So it's a much more friendly and consistent way of getting your data from Evernote into here. But from my experience, it's a little bit buggy, and it's not moving all the notes. But you may not have as many notes as I do, or the same issue that I'm having right now when you're migrating your notes into Notion from Evernote. Okay, so the third method of getting your notes from Evernote into Notion, this one here is where you export from Evernote. Evernote does provide an export mechanism to get your notes out. You can either export in their own proprietary format that they have, or HTML. So if I click on this same note, the one that we use as a test to copy and paste, and also view once the export was done using the Evernote import, you see here we can right click, export note, or you can even go into the menu bar and find it there as well. Now this opens up this window here. You can dump your notes into wherever you want on your file system. It'll create a folder called My Notes by default. You can change this to whatever you want, and you can also again change the format. For this particular process, we're going to have to choose HTML, and I'll go ahead and put this in this Notion migration folder, and we'll actually see what this looks like after it's done. Okay, so that export is complete of that one note. When we go into the folder, the Notion migration folder here that I selected, we can see that the note is in this folder, and there's an HTML file. And because we have an image, and if you have attachments as well, it'll create a folder and then put that data or those files into the folder that's named appropriately. You can see the association pretty easy with the folder name to the file name. So if we open this up, you can easily see that this here's the actual note that we had exported to HTML. Everything looks nice and consistent. Now let's go into Notion and import. So in Notion's import, we can find HTML here. Click on this here. You browse to the folder where you have the export HTML files from Evernote, and you select the HTML notes that you want to import. Now you can select multiple HTML files. You cannot select folders and files. So because I only exported the one note, I can't demonstrate that. But again, if you had multiple HTML files here in this directory, you could select them all and then import them that way. I have done it. It does work. So let's go ahead and demonstrate with this one note. So as we can see, the note, it imported, all the text is here, and it's formatted correctly from the HTML, except for it did not pull in the image. So this is going to be a downside or con to importing your notes this way from Evernote, is that Notion, when it does the import here, it does not actually import the attachments. So it's not following the links that are in the HTML to the file, which are sitting right here in the directory. So it's not trying to get it from anywhere else. They can access it if you know they updated the import tool to do so, but it does not import the image. But again, the content is here from the text itself. And if I wanted this image, I could just as easily find a note and then copy the image in. You can do that right here, and that works well. Now, the problem with doing it this way, of course, is that this can get tedious if you have a lot of notes and you have a lot of images and attachments. So this might not, again, be a good way to import your notes, but I just wanted to go through a few different options here to give you choice in how you actually get your data into Notion. So as I migrate from Evernote into Notion, I'll see if I can get the actual import, the Evernote import feature working. What I plan to do, and I have not tested this yet, is when we go into the import and I put in my credentials and it allows you to set up or choose whichever folders you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple notebooks, move a certain number of notes from Evernote into different notebooks, and then migrate them one at a time, like doing it that way to where there's probably only 100 or so notes in each of the notebooks. And then, see where it errors out. If it's only erroring out on one or two here or there, then hopefully I can get the majority of the notes that I want migrated in, so that it also keeps the images and any other attachments that I need without me having to go through the tedious process of manually adding the attachments in after the fact. Okay, so now that we've seen a few different ways to get your notes from Evernote into Notion, what do you think? Which process or method would you use? Have you used any of these as you've migrated from Evernote to Notion or from any other platform? Well, I hope you liked the video. I hope it was helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. My name is Anton, and have a productive day with positive outcomes.